Welcome back, everyone, to Tarot Journeys with Guy. How's everybody doing out there? So we saw the closing of the Summer Olympics, the Paris Summer Olympics, again, exposed to the deep state death cults sort of ritual, exposing themselves, right, and imprinting and projecting out onto society, onto the audience, right? And so one of the big things was a big performance called The Records, or what they titled as The Record. And it was partly to commemorate the 1977 launch of Voyager and a space probe sent out into space, headed by Carl Sagan. And a golden record was put on to this spacecraft. The record itself was, I think, pressed in France. The record design of the gold record was designed in France, so that's why they commemorated it, right? But thing was that it was sort of like an instruction manual, how to come back to Earth and everything that humans and the Earth sort of presented, right? So part of this performance was this return of this golden space traveler who descended into the arena, right? Another descend, right? This idea of a fallen angelic figure or a fallen figure, a cosmic figure, perhaps. And this is kind of what they're leading to, right? It's this idea of this cosmic figure descending onto the Earth plane in a future distant Earth where the Olympic Games had been stopped. And through the course of this performance, more of these extraterrestrial aliens descend into the arena and start to hoist up this metal ring that looked like a sun symbol with the 12 segments and the 4 cardinal points. And they hoisted that up into the 4 other rings of the Olympic symbol, okay? In that whole thing, they brought up the winged victory, the statue of the goddess Nike, which was found when they started to do the archaeological surveys of the Aegean islands, of all of the Greek islands at the end of the 19th century. They found this wonderful statue, which is still in the Louvre. Okay, and so they brought this up, and it's this headless statue of the winged goddess Nike, which was found in one of the initiatory centers of the ancient world. Now, the 2 major initiatory centers towards the end of the Greek era and when the Romans started to take over, and when these things were started to become written about, because part of the initiatory rites was that they were sworn to silence, okay? So part of this initiation, there was 2 places. One was in Samothrace and the other in Eleusis, okay? Where the hallucinate, I have a really hard time with this word, but the mystery initiation at Eleusis was really well known for being of a high moral standard, okay? High spiritual standard. And it was an initiatory rite that had a public and a private sort of function, okay? The other area that was very similar was Samothrace. This is where they found this statue. Now, apparently, at the end of the initiatory rite, of the private rite of the initiates, upon leaving the underground area, the underneath of the temple where they would perform these rites and go through these trials, and become reborn and regenerated into the initiate, their first sight would be the winged goddess Nike, who is a symbol of victory. Okay, so they put this up there as a symbol of the Olympics, okay? So, but this is a symbol of the mystery schools. This is a symbol of initiation. And that's essentially what these left-hand pathers, this death cult, have been attempting to do, is to put the entire human culture through an initiatory rite, okay? The left-handed path of that initiatory rite. Now, part of the esoteric lore is that over a succession of many thousands of years, the dark side path, the death cultists, had slowly taken over the other side, the initiatory rites of the children of the light, let's call it, the children of the one, the sons and daughters of God, this kind of idea, right? Even though that terminology, see, and we're going to get into this, because that terminology, the sons of God, goes back to the story of the fall of the angels, or the first fall, okay? And this is where we get the story of the deceiver, Satan, Lucifer, the fallen angel, okay? And so part of that is this idea of the original true spiritual path, the true rites, the true religion was taken over by these guys and over a long period of time. And now we're seeing it sort of being played out. Now this is so funny, because these guys, these globalists, this death cult that are trying to take over everything, they have a particular bend, and they're actually like really showing us. Now, part of it is this idea of pushing humans into its next phase, or what they deem as their next phase of evolution, the transhuman element, the post-human element, okay? Creating another humanity, okay, for a new civilization, which these guys understand that through the natural succession of the cycles, let's say, that we are going to sort of reach that point. What they are trying to do is stunt it and restart it in their own image, right? Kind of getting it, right? So yeah, this kind of recreating a very ancient tradition, perverting it, inverting it, and making it their own, and then hoisting up a false image of God, or a false God, okay? And so, and it hits all of the religious buttons. It's like, holy cow, man, I can't believe they actually do this stuff, right? But it relies on the fact that people aren't well studied. They don't understand this. A lot of people don't understand the like what I'm saying, like the history of the mystery schools and the initiatory rites that had led to the time spiritually that we're living in now, that predates Christianity, okay? Now, in the Christian world, like everything that comes before them, they've kind of deemed as evil, like especially like really devout or Orthodox Christians, right? Which I don't agree with. I don't fully agree with. Some of it I do, some of it I don't, but I don't look to religion, nor do I look to another person's sort of view of sacred scripture for that interpretation. No longer. And I don't think we should any longer at all. And I think that's part of the time that we're entering into. I mean, all of our leaders, all of our teachers and heads, religious, cultural, political, all of them are taken over. They don't really have humans' interest in mind. They have another agenda in mind, okay? And we can't go along with this. And so funny. So part of that whole thing, right, the closing ceremony, there was a whole bunch of stuff, right? So, and like that's the thing, is like these guys want to create this new human, like I said, right? So like even like a lab-grown human, or a human, a hybrid human mixed with, different primate genes or fish genes or something, that when and if that came into being and was presented to humanity, it would be deemed alien. It would be deemed something that isn't necessarily human. Okay, so you're kind of getting it, right? And they're just setting the stage. They're just setting further, and they're basically telling us that yes, you're going to go through a reset, and then we're going to restart it, and we're going to restart it in our own image. And like, do you like that? You shouldn't, right? The other thing was Tom Cruise rappelling into the stadium oh my God, like the Scientology poster boy, right? So they got all of the cults kind of come together, right? This guy, he's such an interesting one. Give him super cred though for his age and for what he does, and like, got to admit, it was pretty cool, right? Jumps on a bike, drives through Paris with the Olympic flag, but it's like the pass off to the 2028 games, which are in LA. So we go from one woke hellhole to another woke hellhole. And by 2028, what kind of woke hellhole, communist dystopia will the Olympics be, or will LA be when we get there? Will there even be an Olympics? I say we start now and we boycott the Olympics. We boycott all things that are globalist in nature, and we have to. We can't compromise with these people. There's no compromise. There's no appeasing it anymore, right? They're really willing to sort of lie, steal, cheat, murder to get their aims, and that's very reminiscent of a lot of totalitarian regimes that have come and gone, a lot of communist regimes that have been like that, right? In fact, that's part of the Marxist playbook. Billie Eilish, Lady Gaga, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. The only young person was Billie Eilish. She is like so MK Ultra, it's not even funny. Like, she comes right out of that camp. Like Taylor Swift, same deal. Yeah, do not trust them at all. Don't trust any of them. They are completely taken over. Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, yes, part of that whole thing that Ice Cube exposed with the gangster rap and taking the money from these guys and taking part in the demoralization and the destruction of Western culture. Yeah, fully. Red Hot Chili Peppers, man, they like put these guys in a vat and then they pull them out every once in a while. Like, what's going on, right? People should really question this stuff. And I guess they are. Oh yeah, that's right. On the other side of the ocean, in the United Kingdom right now, a complete police state, Orwellian 1984 communist dystopia is being set up, and people can't speak, and they're too afraid to. And if you speak out, then you get called a racist, or you get called this and that, and that's what people are afraid of, right? You see? And it's the same thing, like the Olympics thing, you can't really post anything. People haven't been able to post anything because they copy strike it. And they've been trying to, engineer the narrative and people's worldview and how they see things. And that's exactly like what we're dealing with, is we are in the midst of an ideological war, a political war, a psychological war. It is fifth generational in the sense that all elements are utilized. People are weaponized, and we see this. We see this with the open borders. We see this with how they use hate speech laws and censorship to demify their political opponents, they meaning the death cult, the deep state globalist, demifying them, turning them into the enemy, weaponizing them, weaponizing speech, weaponizing everything. And people need to really understand it. That's why we all have to start to step up. And we do have to start having, it's time for us to turn a finger up to these guys, but we have to do it differently than what they are doing to us. And it does have to be done very similar to what we saw like with the freedom convoys, okay? And what we saw with the farmer rebellion in the Netherlands and in Belgium and in France and in Germany. It's a non-violent protest. It's a way of saying no. Yes, we are civilly disobedient, but we are not falling into the age-old trap of violence, okay? And so it's like, we have to stop, like thing in the UK with the riots and the looting and all of that. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that's no good, right? You're destroying your own property if you're doing, who am I talking to? Most of us get that, right? But we do have to communicate this stuff. We have to be very active. They are going to steal the election in the United States. Okay, it's so apparent. So, okay, last video, I talked about the VP pick, and I said that he was the governor of Michigan. He's actually the governor of Minnesota, so that was my mistake, and had a few people message me and remind me, so thank you. And I just wanted to fix that. I did know that. I mean, Michigan, Minnesota, one communist progressive hellhole, switch with another, I get it, but no, Minnesota, okay? Whew. And he is a piece of work, that guy. So is Kamala, and so is all the people that are like backing up these deep state puppets, okay? So we got to, no matter what things may appear, we have to resist these guys, but they're losing. But we can't slacken like, you know, it's like in a tug of war right at the end. You can't slacken at all. We cannot slacken at all. They will get away with it. They are going for broke. So that means right to the bitter end. And we've known this forever. These guys are playing a long game, okay? They're playing a generational game where they've put the rest of humanity into this 15-second attention span with no memory. And that's how they get away with it, okay? So you better believe that some of these guys directly come out of that initiatory school that co-opted the mystery teachings of like Eleusis and ISIS, and it started to turn into the form that we see today, like the left-handed path of the Freemasons. And I'm not even sure if the Freemasonic order is still not, like, it's fully taken over and has been for a very long time. That's why there's such a stigma around it. That's why there's so much mystery and things, obfuscation. Okay. So the US election, very important, right? And so like, and that's kind of what we're seeing in the UK is like the playbook. And it's kind of like they're going back in time a little bit, but yet that's what they want to do. That's what the next presidential, Kamala and the deep state get in there. That's what they're going to do. And it already is a two-tier type system where we have justice for one and no justice for our very own people, right? And demifying, basically going after white people. Anybody that is white, Christian, pro their country, you know, and then deeming them far right. Well, that's what communists do. If you're not a communist and if you're not far left like them, then you're far right, and everything is far right. Everything is a Nazi. Everything is a feminist, or a feminist. Everything is a, you know, the ism, a phobe, right? And they do this, and they did this in the Soviet Union. You watch the Stalin show trials. You watch the Cultural Revolution when they hauled out all these young people, started hauling out old conservatives. They did the exact same thing. It's false incrimination and getting them to confess, right? So yeah, this is kind of what we're seeing here. The other thing was the former CEO of this platform, the former CEO of YouTube, who was a huge advocate of censorship and of vaccination, has passed away due to turbo cancer. Now, how is that for karma? Now, I don't celebrate anybody passing, and for a family, you know, it's sad and it's hard, okay, when you lose people. But we are in a war, and look what happens. All these people that have been advocating this stuff, they're gone. All right, so wow, amazing. You know, like, holy cow, right? There's so much more to the picture than meets the eye. And that's something we totally have to remind ourselves of. They're catching us all on our good intentions. Well, we need to activate those good intentions, okay? That's it. The intention needs to turn into action. So yes, we're being called, and we have been being called for quite a while to stand up, to activate. Because things are not going to get better until people start to take charge of their lives. And instead of looking towards the state and looking towards other people to do what they need to do themselves. Because it's the only way to end the tyranny that is slowly closing around the entire globe. Okay? We are going to get through this as long as I'm still around, and as long as there's millions of us, millions and millions and millions and millions of us that are standing up and saying no, right? And doing the right things. Yeah, they aren't going to get away with it. So that's what we got to keep reflecting on. We got to keep sort of grounding ourselves in that knowledge, right? We also need to be around those people too, I guess. So good on you for those that are out there standing up, doing your part, however it is, right? Like I said, they are going to do everything to steal that election coming up, this election that's like, not very far off, okay? And that's the thing, they want to trigger some kind of civil disruption, something that will ensnare the patriot side, the people side, and to incriminate them and do exactly like what they're doing in the UK. If you're not with us, you are an enemy of the state. Wow, Soviet Union. Wow, totalitarianism. So yeah, that was the other thing. Trump, he's been fully active. He's hilarious, man. I haven't really been following too much. I mean, I've been kind of following along on the back burner of what has been kind of taking place, the Trump team is fully into campaign mode, and it's kind of good to see. Yeah, they really are trying to mess with him. I don't know. We're going to look into it a little bit more here. I mean, I always kind of ask to see if something pops up, right? It's funny what I'm shown. He's campaigning, okay? The whole sort of information blitz for the last couple weeks has been to sort of get people to forget that deep state elements in their own government attempted to kill a former president and have probably killed a president before that, and other dignitaries and other major people all over the world. And they're totally trying to cover it up and memory hole it, and rest assured they did it. And like, man, there's so much evidence about how incompetent the Secret Service is, how that team stood down, that they could have took this guy out way before, and like, why? Okay, so let's take a look at what do we need to know, what's coming, kind of the usual. Let's see what has the deep state got planned for the next couple of days. What are we going to see? Are we going to see anything major? How's Trump doing? How's the deep state doing? Is there anything else in the world that we need to know about? Okay, see the devil card? Right in the middle, the devil. But he's reversed. Okay, so in a lot of ways, it talks about freeing ourselves from what the devil represents. Okay. Now, what's interesting, if you know the history going back into about the 15th century, 15th card, okay, 1500s, it started in the middle of the 15th century and kind of went on until about the middle of the 1800s in some places, right, where the Catholic Church ran out of enemies and they started to create the classification of a witch and of a devil worshiper legally. And so before the 1450s, going back to even to the beginning of the early church, there was always this battle between what the orthodoxy deemed as heretics, okay? And so one of the last major crusades against heretics with the Cathars in France, in southern France, in the 13th century, beginning of the 1200s, went up until 1240 or so. But a crusade against the Western people, Westernized people. The Cathars were a Gnostic cult that were deadly opposed to the Catholic Church. They had a very negative cosmic view. They were vegetarians. They didn't believe in procreation. They were kind of suicidal a little bit. But they were also known for being ritually very pure. And the priests were the prefecti, who were the priests, were sometimes called the good men or the bonhomme, right? And so they had this. And the thing was, is even in that time period in the Middle Ages, people were recognizing how corrupt the church was then, okay? So they basically burnt all of them. They killed every single one of them, any kind of and it was an organized thing. It was one of the organized religions that really competed with Catholicism at the time. From there, they moved on to the Templars and took over the Templar order and burned them, okay? And yeah, they keep burning people. Like, I mean, then in the middle of the 1300s, they went through the Black Plague. Okay. Now the Black Plague, they tried to blame on witches. They tried to blame on gypsies and anybody that was coming from the East at that time. And that's actually when we started to see the gypsies come over. But it's this idea, well, it was after the Black Plague. It was it was around the Renaissance time though. 1400s was when the Romani people started to move over. But yeah, they ran out after the Templars. They started to run out of heretics to go after. And so they needed to come up with a new classification. And they did it with the wildcrafters and the midwives and the healers that lived in the villages, which everybody at the time relied on. And yeah, they created the terminology. It's a fiction. If you research it long enough and you try to find the origins of witchcraft, there really isn't any. That's because it didn't exist in the way that the church tried to create it. There were no real black Sabbaths and all of this stuff, these black mass stuff that they tried to create, right? Those things came later. People mimicked it, just like what they did with the Rosicrucian and the Freemasons. They mimicked elements and symbols and rituals from the ancient world, where in some ways those hidden masters in these, they didn't really exist. It was fictionalized in some ways. So, and I mean, that's kind of a heartbreaker for a lot of people, because a lot of people want to believe in that stuff, right? So it's so funny. You can't, and this is part of dualism, and this is kind of what this card really teaches us. And it's such an interesting card. I mean, the reason why I bring up the Templars too is because they were accused of worshiping a head that was called Baphomet. Now, what some researchers have concluded is that term Baphomet may have been a transliterated form of Mahomet, which is Muhammad, which is a reference to Islam, okay? And that's what the Catholics, anybody that wasn't Catholic was evil, or anybody that wasn't Christian at the time, because there was no other. There was the Eastern Orthodox, but there was also the Catholic, and that was it as far as Christianity goes in the Middle Ages, right? So it's this idea of creating an enemy, and that's what they're doing. They're really creating this enemy. They're doing it with the Patriots. They started with the QAnon, but they've been doing it all along, and they've been smearing anybody that is conservative or on the right, okay? And that's what we got to realize. And freeing those chains. The religious dogma, I talked about this in the last one. Religious dogma versus spiritual truth. What does that mean? What does that really mean? That's why we're attracted to the cards, because part of it does show us the truth. I mean, a lot of us have moved away from organized religion. Some parts of it, like the positive parts of religion, we need. We need the community, right? We need the holy houses and the things like that. But right now, no, we don't. And this is what he shows us, is to stand on our own in some ways, right? Deforming the original story, right? It's like this is an Adam and Eve figure, but these are also initiates. He's holding a a torch, which is also a symbol of initiation. You see, you're kind of getting it, right? The initiation of the left-hand path is to chain us to the material world, just like in this card here. So that's a good one, right? And so if you look at the 6 major arcana, the Lover's card, which mirrors that exactly, which represents the first marriage of Adam and Eve in the book of Genesis, right? And it's the opposite of what is presented here, okay? It talks about how there's a couple of different cults that come out of the ancient world. And you can look at these symbols here because they do represent the Dionysic, like the cult of Dionysus and the cult of, like the Bacchanalian thing, right? Like the perversion and just the debauchery that comes with that, right? And just kind of what we know about it, right? This is what's being pushed on us. This is totally what's being pushed on us. And people, like when you're watching stuff like this, like this opening and closing ceremony, it's like, yes, you might be resilient in a lot of ways, right? But for unknowing people that just kind of go, oh yeah, that doesn't have an effect. That is who it's for. It is there to gloss you over. You are taking part in a ritual, and so, man, how do you convey that to people that are completely devoid of spirit? I don't think you do. I don't think you compromise, and especially right now because they are taking over. They are using these very people to take over. Okay? I mean, I live in a city, man. This city is wonderful in a lot of ways, but it's not. It's a utopia, but it's also very dystopic. I move around the city quite a bit on a day-to-day basis. I see a lot of people, and I interact with a lot of people. Very few people have that divine energy, that source. Their spirit has been sucked out of them, and you can see it. It's soulless. A lot of soulless people walking around. It's all over the world, right? And I'm not saying that to get down. It's saying it to become aware, because in a way, those that are with the light within them and recognize it and allow it to shine, you are shining that light for the hundreds of people that can't right now. And it's very important. And I mean, what was the other thing? I mean, all of the spiritual masters and teachers teach the mercy, compassion, forgiveness, and love for your fellow humans. They are all humans, man. And it doesn't you may not have to have direct contact with them, but to have disdain for your fellow human is you're playing into that kind of weaponized, like you're being a weapon for the dark side, which is hard, super hard, but we can do it. A lot of us can't. There's a lot of beautiful people that watch my videos that do this stuff, and that's awesome. And we have to keep going, right? We do, and it's good. And this is good. This is what we were all prepared for. We are prepared to walk. Don't let what you perceive as an inverted world prevent you from listening to what your heart is directing you towards. Empty the heart first. That's part of the task, right? In order for the heart to be full of spirit, of divinity, you must first empty it of the pain and the suffering of the past. Because really that's what it is they're hooking us all on this generational pain and suffering. And like, now you've got like this whole generation of youth that are just completely stilted. Why is that? That's so wild. So wild. Not all of them. There's a lot of really bright young people, obviously. There's a lot of young people, but it's like we're dealing with a situation where they're just glossed over and they're completely ineffective. That's why they're bringing in all these people. Nobody will work. These people will, because they come from places that there's no hope, right? They come from really terrible places. So of course they're going to come here and work. If get a taste of the good life. Right? Well, the good life ain't going to be so good for much longer. And that's part of their plan. Open air concentration camp all over the planet, man. The UK. Escape from New York. Early 80s. Very strange movie. Yeah, where the whole island, Manhattan Island, is like a prison. Wow, geez, they could turn the UK into a prison pretty easy, eh? Yep. That's what they want, man. Don't fool yourself. And that's the thing. It's like, man, you know, like for us in the West, like in the North America right now, we have to speak up for our fellow patriots in the UK right now, because they can't. They're making it extremely difficult. Yeah, and that's so funny. The lawfare with President Trump and trying to get him with the courts and everything didn't work. So that's why they tried to get him. That's why they tried to assassinate him. That's the truth, man. Okay, let's see. Let's do what we did a couple weeks ago, I guess. I did a spread where I laid out like the Patriot side on one side and then the deep state on the other side and then the middle. And I kind of did it for the Trump team, but let's do it for the team. Like I call it Team Trump because that's how I see it. But let's do it for the Patriots, the global Patriots, and Team Trump, all of us. And then the deep state on the one side. And in the middle will be sort of the interplay. Okay, and it kind of will give us information on what these guys are up to and what do we need to expect next. One of Kamala Harris, man. She is so incompetent. She is so dumbed down. It's so hard to believe that she has excelled and raised in the ranks, unless you know their system, unless you know exactly like what they're doing. What they do with these types is they pass them around. They're playthings, and then they prop them up. And that girl that was the Biden, the red-haired girl, the press secretary, this other one, the Jean-Pierre or whatever her name is, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. This is part of that whole decrepit system that they have, right? And they catch them young then, right? And they mess with them and they screw them up, okay? Obviously, we know this. We know all of this. A lot of us really know this, but it's really coming to the light, and they're trying to, in a socialistic, communistic way, equalize everything and put a small group on top and all the rest as being sort of the proletariat, the slaves, okay? Pushing Kamala, though, this is a big thing right now, is the information push. And it's so funny how the Trump team and just the Patriot team in some ways is kind of hooking the youth, but man, the youth, oh man, the youth in the Western world are really messed up, and it's very obvious, but it's like, needs to be completely addressed. They're being weaponized. They're being used against us. That's why we see a lot of older people rebelling and not mostly young people. And it's this leftist thing. It's because of social media. It's because and we've pushed, and like we push our kids into school. Where do you think they're getting indoctrinated? Western culture has not wanted to have any kind of responsibility. The people of the Western world for all of the 20th century, since the end of World War II. Right? And it's the same thing. If they start another big war, you think people are going to be responsible? No, not at all. They're going to hide. They're going to run and hide. You can't expect them to do anything less. Not every single person is a warrior, is a stand-up, is a leader. Okay? But I guess maybe that's part of it, is we are sort of seeing the avenue. We're seeing the lines of attack in some ways, right? And it does have a lot to do with these completely incompetent people that are in charge, right? And to sort of go after them. I mean, we see that with, what was it? She was, I don't know, head of some faculty in like Harvard or something. I don't know. She got caught plagiarizing. I think Kamala is going to get caught. She's been caught already. That's the thing. She's been caught red-handed lying and telling all sorts of stuff, right? But it's more about like seeing how they've been implementing this stuff. Anything globalist has to be boycotted now. Because they're coming after your kids. They're coming after future generations. They ain't going to stop. They're not going to like appease. They're not going to sit and go, yeah, oh, you know, I think you're right. Also, and that's the other thing, like Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton and those types are actually behind Kamala behind. They're in charge of the Democrats in a lot of ways, right? And so, and that's what I mean. Those things have to be called out. And the ones that are actually calling them out and resisting and pushing back against them, they need to be supported. Okay. And there's quite a few, there's a couple of women in the European Parliament that are very vocal. We've got a couple of, congresswomen that are just, yes, right? We've got quite a few actually. But see, everything gets glossed over with these idiotic puppets that they parade out. And basically they're ruining everything. They're there to create the reset. They're there to reculturate your culture. And you can't, saying that's the thing, I'm getting impatient because they're actually getting away with it, man. Like they're wrecking everything. These deep state globalist death cultists that have been implanted everywhere, and they need to be rooted out. They need to be spotted out, and they need to be stopped, and they need to be, we need to stand up to them and say no to them, man, and not go along with their reset, right? Their agenda is this reset. You see, and it's so funny when you start getting to the top of it. Both sides want kind of a similar thing now, especially like with the Patriot side. Like the people want not necessarily to go back to the way things were, but we want the wheel to turn naturally. We don't want these guys turning the wheel for us. The Great Reset has to kind of happen in another way. It has to be based on truth and not the lies that are being pushed at us, right? So that's part of it. Yeah, they keep warning about President Trump, like assassination. They might try to poison him. Actually, that's kind of weird that I'm seeing that. I think they might try to kill him once or twice more, right? There might be something else. And man, I really hope his team is sort of clamping down. Yeah, poison him or inject him somehow with, a sickness of some sort. That's something that has to be sort of, I guess, warned, talked about. Yeah, they want to capture the minds of the next generation, man. They really do. That's like their big aim right now. That's like a huge thing. Those are the foot soldiers, right? That's why they're talking about death rates. That's why they're talking about like declining birth rates and how people are living older, because they're trying to ramp up to a global war. They did this with World War I and World War II, and they started talking about the birth rates before, because they need fresh bodies. We've talked about this, and we got to keep talking about this, right? And we got to keep reminding these guys that they are losing. They're losing every day. They lose their footing, right? And so it is going to be this thing like where the deep state might be eliminated, right? They might not like at all, but all of the indoctrinated people are still sort of like in step with all of this stuff. And that's part of that job, is like the de-indoctrination, like the debrief that needs to really take place on a global level. Because man, the wool has been completely pulled over our eyes. We know this, right? The Team Trump, like the American Patriots, are actually preventing the digital currency from being put through right now. That's actually what's happening. They've stopped it. So we're like on the brink of it. That's why you're seeing this stuff in the UK. That's why you're seeing all of the digital laws being passed in Australia. Okay, and all of the weird wokeisms that are being inserted, right? Because they're being prepared. It's the same thing here, that they've been trying to push the carbon tax and I guess it's just like the wokeisms, like I said, with the Australians, but it's the same thing. It's like all of these different areas, and then New Zealand kind of has their own little sort of part in it. They got censored though, right? That's like a really big thing. But it's sort of taking like all of the test runs and then implementing it on a larger scale, right? Europe is sort of ready for it, So, and that's kind of, that's a really big thing, right? They really are kind of like the Patriot side, like the Team Trump are kind of like sitting back and like letting letting the enemy destroy itself in a way, right? They're letting them just, they don't even need to do much, it's just like, boom, these guys are exposing themselves completely, right? They're exposing their complete agenda. Yeah, and I think there's certain elements that have been trying to swing over, and they're not. There is a group in this deep state war. It's kind of like World War II. It's like, nope, unconditional surrender. This is the only thing that's going to work now, because you guys are evil. You're terrible. You're tyrants, and you're attempting to take over everything. Right? Hope that was clear. That's kind of interesting, some of the stuff that came out there. Okay, let's do one more. A little bit of guidance to close off the reading. Okay. Like always, like in all of the readings, right? We have to remember, right? Even though things might get a little intense, sometimes it's necessary. We need to be aware of the stuff that's come out, right? But we also have to kind of keep in mind the direction that humanity is heading. We are heading in the way that is being described, right? On both sides. Right now, it's one or the other, right? And so I'm choosing the human destiny side. I'm choosing the way of divinity. I'm choosing for a human future, right? And that's, we all have to have that kind of conviction. There's no more compromise with these guys. It is the dark side. It is there to take you over. It has taken over a lot of people. And that's something that we have to sort of, nothing's set in stone. Don't get all crazed, right? But we have to kind of remember this Aquarian impulse, this energy is moving us towards a period where humanity does naturally come to the recognition that we are all of the same family. We are all of the same blood, and that we are to live on this planet, and we are to evolve together, and we are to move together, and that there is no more division, right? And not like how these, the woke leftist sort of idea, the tolerance for them but none for those, and and the inclusivity, that kind of behavior. That's not what I'm talking about. They co-opted those ideas. Those ideas got co-opted a long time ago, but we are moving towards that. We are moving towards and even to the point of us in our lifetimes being able to see parts of it, because we do see parts of it. It's amazing how awakened people are, and how some people do have a firm vision of where our future is heading, right? And so it's like we do have to have not only our own personal vision of where do things lead for us, but also for the future generations, for our children, right? And having that vision, and being aware that yes, it does matter what we leave behind. That's like such a fallacy. It's sad, actually, when people leave the earth plane and don't realize that kind of stuff. Okay, so many of us are ready, and that direction is really clear to us, right? things aren't so cut and dry. I mean, there are so many gray areas with things, right? But we got to remind ourselves. So one of the really good indicators is moving away from a fear-based reality. Okay, that's a kind of a thing that we have. You got to keep that in your mind, right? Because what I'm talking about doesn't have, like, I mean, yes, I accept fear, but I'm not utilizing fear. I'm not trying to get people to live in fear. I am for a better world. See, and that's the thing. We have to keep that in mind. What are we for? I am for truth. I am for freedom. Right? I am for a betterment of the world, a betterment of the people around me. I am for a future for our children, for our children's 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 children, and onward. That's what I'm for. I'm for free expression. I am for creativity. I am for creation, right? We know what's against us, right? So we do need to understand what is against us, but we need to be focused on what we're for. And that's what we need to present to people. And that's when you go to the marches and the rallies and the things, it's what are we for? Not this anti thing, right? Like anti-fascist. Well, get a load of this. You're a bunch of fascists. And I'll prove it to you. And there's only really one way to deal with these types. There really is, and there is no compromise, right? They're not good, and it's like, that's the thing with materialism. That's the thing with the dark side and atheism, is it twists everything, right? It twists it and dements it to sort of justify the ill action that comes with that kind of philosophy. Because and I mean, we see it with scientism, with the scientific community. It's sort of like, and I mean, that it is partly what helped break us out of some of the superstitious thinking that was keeping us oppressed, okay? And that's kind of why I'm addressing religion in some ways, because we can fall back into those old superstitions, but man, it's very important. So like moving out of a fear-based system, moving out of that kind of way of being, and moving towards one that is, I guess, more enlightened, more vision-oriented, because the foundations have been set. That's what the three of wands show us, right? The foundations have been set, and that we're free to kind of walk through the barriers, but like what they keep doing is imposing this sort of mental state, the mind, what the swords represent, to sort of prevent us from moving forward. Okay, and so we can't necessarily see outwardly in some of the places that we live, right? Because some of us, we live all over the world, right? People that are tuning in and us sharing this time, right? And sometimes it's not so obvious what I'm talking about, and we have to first come within. It is within. It may not appear as such right now, but things are the light is going to expose a lot of this. It is going to show itself through. And so all of the readings always say, in spite of how dark it may seem right now, we are going to get through this, but you have to activate, you have to find that reserve, right? And have the courage to stand in some ways when it comes time, right? Whatever it is. But yeah, we are going to get through this. And that's the thing, right? It's like, reflect upon what are we for, and not getting pulled into like what is being, what is against us and what we are against. So we need to be aware of it, right? And we need to sit now. We need to actually sit and with prayer, but also with meditation. And we need to not only intend these things, like create that intention, but activate. You will see yourself moving in a particular direction, or you're being sort of shown that you need to go and take part in this, or to go and interact with these people, or to meet the people that we're like of the same right now, even though that division doesn't really exist. But the people on the other side are going to see us and what we're for, and that's what's going to shift them, right? And I've witnessed it in my life, right? And it works. It works. I've seen it work with many, 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 many people, and it's going to keep working. Okay? So that's it for today. So everybody out there, please take care of yourself and hit that like button and subscribe. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.